A bunch of large storms are coming to the United States over the next couple of weeks, and this will bring the return of severe weather, which includes damaging winds, large hail, and tornadoes. And this is going to kick off today, but it'll really ramp up as we go later into this week, as we'll have multiple different storm systems that'll be moving over the Rockies, impacting the Great Plains, Midwest, Ohio Valley, and Southeast. So in today's forecast, we are going to break down exactly what you need to know about the weather that'll be impacting the United States over the next 10 days. And we'll begin with what's happening across the country today, and we actually do have a severe weather event that will be setting up later today across the Ohio Valley and also the Mid-Atlantic. A low pressure system is currently spinning in the upper Midwest, and we also have a lot of moisture that is currently coming out of the Pacific, and this is going to lead to a slightly more organized risk of severe storms today, which we'll talk more about here in just a moment. Back along the West Coast, things are very quiet right now, and same thing with the Southeast, not really dealing with much activity for right now, but for some of you this will change as we go later into this week. Now let's talk more about the severe weather potential for the next few days, and we'll begin with what's happening today. The Storm Prediction Center has outlined a marginal and slight risk of severe weather for parts of the Ohio Valley and Mid-Atlantic, stretching from Delaware, Maryland back into Indiana, where there will be a threat of damaging winds and as well as large hail today. Those threats are really going to be the biggest concerns. However, there will be a localized area that we are watching for this afternoon and evening for the potential of a few tornadoes. This is mainly going to be in West Virginia, extreme southern Ohio, and also extreme eastern Kentucky, but we could still see an isolated tornado essentially anywhere where the green is. So make sure that you have multiple ways to receive alerts and have a tornado action plan ready to go. There is a chance that we go live later today, so make sure you are subscribed to the channel. Definitely an area to watch for though, for sure, as we could have multiple discrete supercells out there, and we'll talk more about what it looks like in terms of timing and the tornado threat in just a moment. Now by the end of this week, things are going to be changing a lot, because what's going to happen is our weather pattern is going to change entirely, which we'll talk more about here in a moment. But what we're essentially going to have is storm systems that are coming over the Rockies instead of the ones we've been seeing over the last 7 days, which have been coming out of Canada. So a very different setup, which is going to lead to more severe weather events. And the Storm Prediction Center has already issued a slight risk of severe weather on Thursday. This is where our cold and warm front are meeting, so there will be a little bit more elevated of wind shear in this area. But I think for right now, the main concern is damaging winds and hail across Iowa, Missouri, Nebraska, and as well as Kansas. But that could definitely change as we get closer. It's going to depend a lot on how much moisture we have that gets there to the Central Plains, which is a little bit of a question mark as of right now. By Friday, we are talking about a much larger storm system bringing scattered severe storms from Texas all the way back into the Great Lakes. I personally do not think that we are going to see an outbreak, at least for now, on Friday. That could definitely change, but I do think at least scattered severe weather across this entire area is possible. I really think by the weekend and next week, we are going to start to see a serious uptick in severe weather, especially for those in the central and southern plains, which we're going to talk more about here in just a moment. But nonetheless, damaging winds, hail, and again, tornadoes are possible anywhere in that slight risk region on Friday. So let's go day by day, beginning with what's happening today. And later this afternoon, our tornado threat will be increasing across Kentucky and West Virginia. Significant tornado parameter values, a little bit higher than forecasted compared to yesterday. We are now up to values near 2 to 3. So slightly more elevated tornado threat compared to what we were thinking yesterday. But nonetheless, I still think the threat is low, because our winds overall across the entire atmosphere are mostly coming out of the west and southwest. Not a whole lot of veering. So I think generally speaking today should be mostly a wind threat, but we could see a couple of tornadoes sneak in, mainly in eastern Kentucky and West Virginia throughout the afternoon and early evening tonight. Notice that the values by around 8, 9, 10 o'clock tonight, very low to 0. So I think overall our main corridor for any tornado potential will be mainly in this region. So definitely make sure that you have multiple ways to receive alerts and have a tornado action plan ready to go. So now let's go through the timing, beginning with what's happening by 3 to 4 o'clock this afternoon, which is when I expect storms to initiate right in southern Ohio and northern Kentucky. These will start out on the strong side of things, but will quickly go severe with mainly a large hail and wind threat, in my opinion. I think we'll start to see a threat for an isolated tornado ramp up around 5 in parts of West Virginia and northern Kentucky. By 6 to 7 o'clock, these storms are continuing to move east and east-southeast, and despite them moving more to the south rather than north, it's obviously still a threat here that we could still see a tornado in if we're able to get enough veering winds, especially back over in central and southern West Virginia. By around 8 to 9 o'clock, these storms continue to push east. It'll become more outflow dominant, meaning we're going to be talking more about a line of thunderstorms in Virginia and Maryland. And then as we go later into the evening, into the overnight hours, there will still be some strong storms left over, so you might wake up during the overnight hours in Virginia or maybe even back over in Tennessee, but don't be alarmed. It's mostly just going to be strong storms by that point. And then by tomorrow, we're going to be clearing out quite a bit. Still some scattered showers left over in parts parts of the Northeast, but not really any severe weather here as we go into Tuesday. Now let's talk more about what's upcoming later this week and into next week. As we are going into the peak of severe weather season, we are going to be seeing a very active stretch of weather. Right now, our jet stream is lifted well off to the north, which is where our storm system today is coming from. Notice how we have a ridge in the southern plains, and then back off to the west, there is a small trough forming back over in California. But really, the big story later this week will be that we're changing our weather pattern entirely, where we're going to go from storms coming out of Canada to storms coming over the Rockies. That is a big difference, by the way, because any storm system that goes over the Rockies usually leads to turbulent mixing, which means that essentially cold air aloft is mixing with warm air near the surface, and this creates a favorable environment for severe weather. So that's going to be a big deal by the middle and end of this week. I think Thursday and Friday, again, the main days to watch for this week. Eventually, by the weekend, we'll be talking about a storm system here just off to the west of the Great Plains. This should allow for a multi-day threat of severe weather even into the weekend across parts of Kansas, Oklahoma, and Texas on Saturday and Sunday, maybe in a little bit of Nebraska. By Sunday and Monday, that storm will be ejecting back over into the Midwest, and then by the middle and end of next week, things become too uncertain. However, our general weather pattern is promoted that we are likely going to see high pressure more dominant along the East Coast, at least for most of the rest of April, after about April 24th or so, and then low pressure more dominant along the West Coast. And I had a lot of people asking me in my last forecast, how can you possibly predict weather 1 to 2 weeks out? Well, you can't really predict the mesoscale features, which means that small scale stuff, but you can, and a lot of times, at least predict the synoptic features, which are your large scale features in the United States. Not saying that this is definitely going to happen or it's going to happen for more than a week, but it will definitely be our more general weather pattern, I think, for the remainder of April, mainly for the last 5 or 6 days there of April, which should lead to more severe weather events before going into May. Let's put this into more simplistic terms by going through the future radar, beginning with today. Again, an explosion of showers and thunderstorms is expected later this afternoon in the mid-Atlantic and the Ohio Valley. By tomorrow, a little bit of snow moving across Michigan, and then eventually by Wednesday, we are dealing with a pretty quiet day overall. Not expecting anything significant by any means on Wednesday, but by Thursday is the beginning of a potentially multi-day severe weather stretch. It'll all begin back over in the Central Plains, where there will be some showers and thunderstorms contingent on the capping being overcome, which means that we have a temperature inversion that'll likely be in place on Thursday in the Central Plains. If that is overcome, we could see some severe storms there in Iowa, Kansas, Missouri, and Nebraska. On Friday, this low pressure system becomes more organized and moves into the Midwest, which should lead to a pretty elongated area of showers and thunderstorms from Michigan all the way back into Oklahoma and Texas. This is definitely a day that I think there's a pretty good chance that will be live on, so make sure you are subscribed to the channel. By Saturday, storms continue to meander here in the Midwest, but not nearly as intense. A more organized threat for showers and thunderstorms is likely in Oklahoma and Texas on Saturday. On Sunday, this will start to move more to the east, where we could have a little bit more severe weather. This should stay scattered. Don't expect, again, an outbreak as of right now. That could always change as we get closer, but it does not look like any of these days in particular are screaming a tornado outbreak to me. I don't see that, at least for right now. By Tuesday, another storm system will try to move through the Midwest, and maybe some more severe weather even back over in the central and southern plains. And then by Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday of next week, just look at the repeated rounds here of showers and thunderstorms in the central plains. I think it's going to be very active if you're over in Kansas, Oklahoma, or Texas. Things will be a little bit less active, I think, in the southeast and as well as along the west coast. But I do think, generally speaking, this is the region here where we're going to be dealing with a very active stretch of weather for probably the next 2 weeks. So get ready. A lot of rain is coming, and a lot of areas, especially Texas, need that rainfall desperately with the drought that we are currently in. And all aboard the temperature roller coaster. Another shot of cold air is expected tonight into tomorrow across the Midwest, Ohio Valley, and Northeast. This will also impact pretty much the entire East Coast late Tuesday into Wednesday with below average temperatures. A little late season cold blast here, or really not late season, but more of like a winter type cold blast that we're seeing in spring. Eventually by Thursday and Friday, warm air builds across the Ohio Valley, Midwest, and the Southern Plains, above average temperatures in the forecast. By the weekend and early next week, things will be relatively above average for the East Coast, and then below average further off to the north in parts of the Northern Plains and also the Pacific Northwest. And the Weather Prediction Center is forecasting quite a bit of rainfall over the next 5 to 7 days from the Midwest back into the Central and Southern Plains. This is vastly different than what we were talking about last week, where there was a gigantic hole that was in the same exact area. So some good news if you need rainfall, which areas like Texas and Oklahoma desperately need rainfall with the drought we're currently in. The Climate Prediction Center is also forecasting for most of next week that we are going to be talking about above average rainfall across the Great Plains, Ohio Valley, and even back over on the East Coast. On the other hand, though, above average temperatures are in the forecast from the Great Plains all the way back back into the southeast. So again, warm weather, but at least some rain is in the forecast for those in the central and southern plains. And as always, thank you all so much for watching today's forecast. If you are new to the channel, make sure to subscribe down below, and also make sure to click the bell icon down below so you're notified if we go live later today, which is a possibility depending on how things evolve. There's a much better chance though that we'll be live later this week, mainly on Friday for severe weather coverage. So make sure to subscribe to the channel, and our next video should be tomorrow, so make sure to stay tuned.